In the days after Charlie Kirk was shot dead at a speaking event, the country watched a political ecosystem convulse. The homicide, investigated by state and federal authorities, led to the arrest of a 22-year-old suspect, Tyler Robinson, who has since been charged with aggravated murder and related counts. Officials said surveillance images and family cooperation played major roles in identifying and taking him into custody. Almost immediately, public conversation splintered. Alongside sorrow and memorials, social feeds and pundits became saturated with speculation and rapidly spreading theories. Amid that chaos, Candace Owens emerged as one of the most vocal figures promoting an alternate narrative. Within days of the assassination, she began suggesting that some facts were being suppressed and that the official story needed far more scrutiny. She urged questions about donors, foreign influence, and possible motives that had not yet been confirmed by investigators, and her tone moved quickly from skeptical to accusatory on multiple platforms. Owens initially centered one of her claims on a private letter reportedly written by Charlie. She accused public figures who quoted the letter selectively of misrepresenting Kirk's views and demanded the full text be published so the public could read his words in context. Turning Point USA published the full letter shortly thereafter. When reporters compared the published text to the excerpts that had circulated, many observers concluded the most sensational readings did not match the complete document. The letter's opening lines and broader context undercut the idea that the document had been drastically distorted. From that point, Owens' narrative widened. She described an alleged intervention in the Hamptons attended by wealthy donors, business figures, and political operatives, alleging that coercion and pressure had been applied to influence Charlie's positions on Israel. That allegation, if verified, would raise deeply consequential questions about influence and motive inside conservative circles. But verification matters. When journalists and attendees checked the accounts, details diverged. The billionaire investor at the center of the allegation denied any coercive behavior and released messages that appeared cordial and inconsistent with the idea of blackmail. Multiple attendees and associates disputed the most dramatic depictions and said the meeting was not what Owens described. The speed and scale of Owens' claims had consequences beyond debates about motives. Family members and close friends of Charlie Kirk, already dealing with shock and grief, publicly pushed back, asking for restraint and warning that unverified rumors could inflict more harm. Some accused Owens of hijacking grief for attention. Others defended her as someone asking necessary questions. The tension between those instincts, the impulse to demand answers immediately and the need to allow investigators to build a verified case, framed much of the early public discourse. As weeks went by, some of Owens' claims grew more elaborate, sometimes shifting after new information emerged. She floated possibilities about foreign flights, donor behavior, and other anomalies around the time of the killing. Independent fact-checkers and newsrooms examined flight logs, public records, and timelines and found several of the more specific claims could not be corroborated with the available evidence. In many instances where evidence contradicted a claim, timelines were revised or details reinterpreted, which deepened skepticism among those who prioritized source verification. At the same time, the national political reaction elevated the event beyond local tragedy. High-profile tributes and political responses turned the killing into a broader moment of national debate about political violence, speech, and security. Some government actors took diplomatic and administrative actions meant to signal consequences for people who celebrated the killing online. Symbolic gestures and public honors also intensified emotions and the sense that the event had become a defining moment for certain political constituencies. Those responses helped fuel the sense that every gesture, every timing discrepancy, and every donor relationship merited fresh scrutiny. For anyone narrating this episode responsibly, the difference between verified fact and rumor is crucial. The verifiable core of the record at that stage was narrow. A public figure was killed, a suspect was arrested and charged, a selection of personal documents and messages were released, and public figures made competing claims. Everything beyond that core required corroboration, preferably documentary evidence, eyewitness testimony, or court filings. When a high-profile communicator amplifies unverified theories in an emotionally hot environment, the consequences ripple quickly. Investigators can be flooded with tips that waste resources, grieving families can be re-traumatized, and the public record can be obscured by competing narratives. If there is a single takeaway from this first chapter, it is a plea for verification. Asking hard questions in moments of national trauma is appropriate. Asserting definitive conclusions without clear, corroborating evidence is not. The next chapter will look at how these unverified claims collided with legal risks, reputational damage, and the human costs for the people closest to Charlie Kirk. Legal, reputational, institutional, and deeply human. And about what accountability looks like when rumors harden into headlines. After the initial round of claims, denials from people named by Candace Owens began to appear publicly, and that pushback started to reshape the narrative. The investor she cited denied the most sensational allegations and released messages that, by many readings, did not support a story of coercion or blackmail. Those rebuttals forced parts of the conversation from bare assertion back toward verification. Legal risks became visible quickly. A number of people whom Owens' statements implicated indicated they were consulting lawyers about possible defamation or reputational harm. At least one figure publicly said they were talking to lawyers over what they described as false or damaging statements tied to the aftermath. The prospect of civil suits highlights a blunt reality of public life. Repeating explosive allegations without robust evidence can produce legal exposure, not just social or reputational fallout. The possibility of legal claims is practical as well as symbolic. It sets boundaries on what public figures can reasonably assert without proof. Reputational damage also unfolded inside conservative networks. Donors, staff, and allied organizations faced internal strain as members debated whether leaders should prioritize immediate amplification of alarming claims or protect institutional credibility by demanding evidence. That tension is consequential. Political organizations rely on trust from donors and the public, and when that trust is shaken by rapidly circulated allegations, operational stability and fundraising can suffer. Some donors publicly expressed discomfort. Some staffers privately worried about the long-term cost to organizational legitimacy. Newsrooms paid a price too. Journalists diverted time to fact-check and debunk specific claims that had already circulated widely, often publishing corrections and clarifications after the initial spread. Each correction is a real cost. Investigative time and newsroom resources are finite, and chasing rumors reduces the bandwidth for original investigative work that could advance the factual record. That diversion can enable a feedback loop in which speculation commands attention simply because corrections demand time-consuming rebuttal. Beyond media and legal consequences, there were profound human costs. Charlie Kirk's widow, family, and close friends have had to grieve amid constant public commentary that sometimes veered into accusation. Bereavement in the public eye is uniquely painful. Private sorrow intersects with public spectacle, and the repeated circulation of disputed allegations can re-traumatize survivors and slow their ability to mourn in peace. That reality should be central to any ethical assessment of how influencers and commentators act in moments of violent loss. Platform policy and moderation also became flashpoints. Social networks and hosting platforms faced pressure to label, limit, or remove posts that repeated unverified allegations. Some platforms acted quickly. Others resisted broad moderation on the basis of free speech concerns. The resulting patchwork response left many users unclear about where the line sits between opinion and harmful misinformation, and it highlighted the need for clearer cross-platform norms in the moments after traumatic public events. Looking forward, practical steps can limit similar harms. Organizations can adopt internal verification thresholds before amplifying explosive claims, institute rapid response verification units to check crucial documents and timelines, and train spokespeople in trauma-informed communication that avoids re-traumatizing survivors. Media teams might require a minimum evidentiary standard before repeating incendiary allegations. These measures would not prevent legitimate whistleblowing, but they would reduce the chance that rumor metastasizes into accepted fact. Legally and procedurally, the courts and investigators will ultimately supply the authoritative record. The criminal case against the charged suspect should, through evidence presented under oath, establish motive, timeline, and culpability in a manner that clarifies many points that social media speculation cannot. Civil suits, if filed, will further test the boundaries of responsibility for harmful public claims. Until those records arrive, prudence and restraint remain the most reliable guides. This episode is a cautionary tale about how quickly grief can become a vector for rumor and how influential voices can turn speculation into widely held belief. For movements and media alike, the lesson is straightforward. Amplify evidence, not anxiety. Prioritize the needs of the bereaved. And remember that the reputational harm of a false narrative can outlast any political moment. If institutions want to preserve credibility and moral standing, they must choose verification over velocity and mercy over the appetite for a quick, dramatic story.